Hey filmmakers, how's it going tonight? Thanks for joining me on another late night stream here. We're going to be doing a whole bunch of fun things tonight, talking about some crazy stories that happened to me, and I think you guys are going to want to hear this one. And we're also going to talk about writing scripts, brainstorming ideas for videos and movies and things like that. So there's a whole bunch to come in this live stream, and if you guys have any questions for me, definitely start leaving them below down right now in the chat. I'd love to answer them. Anything about filmmaking, camera gear, anything like that. This is kind of a bit of a Q&A live stream, a little bit of story time, and just kind of bouncing off some ideas about script writing and everything like that. So I think you guys are going to enjoy this one. Stick with me because we're going to have a good time talking about some crazy different things here. So what's up? We've got Samyadeep. I'm sorry, I destroy people's names when I try to pronounce them. How's it going? Carly in the chat. What's up? Hey, hey. So I think we're going to have a good time. Hopefully you guys can all hear me. Please leave a comment. Can you hear me okay? Can you see me okay? Is the buffering okay? Sometimes it's hard to know once you get going live if things are going smoothly. So hopefully they are. Now, if you clicked on this video and saw this live stream coming in, maybe you saw the thumbnail, a little alien spaceship kind of hovering over a tent. And I have a whole story about that I want to share with you guys. And I've kind of got the whole office here set up in the alien green theme. And then we've got kind of this weird little red light beam behind me just for fun. So also repping some alien shirt today. So good stuff, right? So let me tell you about a crazy story. So one time, this is just kind of a story that happened to me, and I want to explain it to you guys to understand the thumbnail and a little bit of the background on this true filmmaking story. And then we'll move into some more good stuff here. So one time we were out camping. So this was about just a couple years ago. We were up camping, and I live in Arizona. So we drove up to the forest up north. And when we were, going out there, 4-wheel drive in the truck, just going out to the middle of nowhere land, as far as we could. And so we were really far away from anyone out in the middle of the forest. And we were just going to go camping, me, my wife, and a couple of our friends. So we decided to find this nice little spot, kind of deep down a dirt road that you can really only get to when you're 4-wheel driving. And we set up our tent and everything like that. And it was the first night, had a good time, had our fire, ate food, whatever it was, tinfoil dinners or something. And then we went to bed. Everything was as usual, as normal, right? Well, I'm already passed out. I fall asleep really quick. I don't know if you guys can relate, but the second my head hits the pillow, I'm usually out like that. So I'm out like a light, just completely passed out. And then I'm woken up, like from the middle of a dead sleep, and my wife, Carly's saying, there's a light. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Light? Like, was what I'm thinking in my head. I didn't say that because I was groggy coming out of sleep, but I was going, there's a light. What? And I look, and the entire tent is completely lit up, like totally white, bright light. The whole thing is completely illuminated. Weirdest thing ever. And then, as soon as I wake up and see that the whole tent is all lit up, all of a sudden it goes flickers and just turns off. And then it's completely dead silent. It's complete pitch black, no crickets, no chirping of anything, no sounds, no footsteps, no birds. It was just quiet. The stillness of the woods, no noises, no animals, no wildlife. It was crazy. So we're freaking out. I'm looking at Carly and going, what on earth? What just happened? Like, what was that light? What is that? And there's no sound at all. And then I'm sitting there thinking, oh, maybe it's our friends that we came camping with, and they're just up and about. Maybe you just forgot something and they're just going to get it, by the campfire or something with their flashlight or whatever. But then I'm listening, and we only came with 2 other people, and I hear, and he's snoring. And I'm like, crap, it's not him, someone else. It was not him walking around, because he's passed out sleeping, and his wife was too. And so we're like, crap, what are we gonna do? So we yell out for them, we wake them up, and we get up and we just start walking around and searching all over the campsite, trying to find out if someone was there or what. But we heard no cars, no one drove by. It wasn't like headlights from a car, nothing like that. And you would think, oh, maybe it's just a flashlight. Someone was sitting there holding a flashlight or something onto the tent. No, it wasn't someone holding a flashlight, because the light was perfectly still, just illuminating our entire tent, completely lit up. Creepiest, eeriest thing ever. And it wasn't the moon, because there was no moon that night. So it was just pitch black out, no moon. And if it was someone holding a flashlight on the tent, they would have had to hold it so still and keep it right on the tent and be spotlighting from like way deep in the woods. Like, because the direction, like the tent was all lit up on two sides, and the side that the light was coming from was like in the middle of the deep dark woods, which like goes on forever and ever, and no one's back there, no one's camping out there. So weirdest experience ever. And we still say it was aliens. I don't really know. We kind of joked that it was, who knows? But that is the story of how we almost maybe could have been abducted by aliens, but luckily the light turned off and maybe they flew away or whatever. So that's kind of the theme of tonight's live stream. Crazy story I thought I would share with you guys just for fun. But anyways, kind of along that line, how do you guys tell stories as filmmakers and come up with different ideas? So that's one of the questions we're going to be answering tonight, and a couple different ways and thoughts about that. So couple questions popping in here. Sandeep says, what are your thoughts on the Zcam E2C? So I haven't used any of the Zcams yet. I do want to get my hands on a Zcam and just kind of test it out. It looks like a great little camera. I love the body and form factor of it. I wish more camera makers would make them in kind of that cube shape. That's really cool, really unique. And then it allows you to completely rig it out, similar to a Red camera. Obviously, it's kind of in that mini form factor, but I haven't used it yet. It looks really cool. I think if I were to get a Zcam though, I wouldn't get the Micro Four Thirds version. I'm not a big fan of Micro Four Thirds cameras myself, because already cameras hunger for a lot of light, and Micro Four Thirds struggles in low light situations. So if I were to do it, I'd be going with at least the APS-C sensor or a full frame sensor. So I think that's the Zcam, what is it called? The F series, and then there's the S series for Super 35. So I'd probably go with one of those to test it out, try it out. But I've talked a little bit, the F6, I believe it is, the full frame version. So that's probably what I would go with if I went with the Zcam. But in my personal opinion, just right now, those cameras are still so new, and the company's still so new, that I think a lot of it's kind of in beta, to tell the truth. I think that the people that are using it right now are what are called the early adopters in business. So they're trying it out, and they're building that kind of customer base and really kind of testing it out. So I typically like to go with cameras that are a little more tried, true, and test it out for my go-to cameras. But it would be a fun camera to just test out and see, but I don't think it's something that I would use on a daily basis right now. But I would love to hear what you guys think down in the chat below. Has anyone else used the Zcam? What are your thoughts on that? What's up, Spandan? How's it going? Spandan the Beats. It's good to see you back in the live chat here. What's up, Max? Good to see you in here as well, catching the live stream. That's always fun. So let's get back to talking about different filmmaker stories and writing scripts and everything like that. So let me know in the chat if you guys relate to this, but is it difficult for you guys to write stories and come up with ideas for new videos and like that sort of thing? Now, if you're doing corporate videos and live events and things like that, then you may not relate to this at all if you're doing that kind of work, because you're not coming up with narrative stories. But sometimes I like to make short films and come up with these little ideas, or I would love to, of course, shoot an entire feature film. So I'm always trying to think of these script ideas, but that's where I struggle the most. And I don't know if you guys can relate to that, but for me, I'm much more technical. I like the technical side of lighting, making things look good, and operating the camera and making, a great looking shot and making everything just perfect and pristine. So much more technical than sometimes the creative side of coming up with these crazy elaborate stories and plots and schemes. So sometimes you have to have friends and things that are good at doing that and writing and such, but not everyone has great stories for you to write. So how do you guys handle that? What do you do to come up with new stories and ideas? I would love to know. Let's jump back into the chat here for a sec. Hangs for Fun says, any suggestions to come up with a storyline to be reused, a template, if you will, to establish shot lists and such, but then how do you keep each episode interesting? Yeah, I think that's an interesting question or idea there. So you definitely don't want it to become too canned or repetitive, and so people are like, I've heard this story before, and it becomes really predictable. So I don't know that you could kind of shot list everything out, because that would be really obvious. But I think you can come up with different formulas for writing stories. There's the hero's journey, which is probably the most popular. If you watch any of the, not even just like the superhero movies, you hear hero's journey and you think superhero, but just about most any movie, there's a hero's journey. There's always like there's some sort of underdog or whatever it is, and then they come on to this trial or challenge or whatever, and are they going to take it on or not? And then of course they do, and there's some sort of big climax, hopefully a resolution. So there definitely is a story, plot structure, beginning, middle, end, that the English teachers teach you, but I don't know that you could quite shot list out every story and find a good way to make it really easy to repeat videos that way. But if you come up with an idea like that, that would be great. I would say the easiest way to write your stories and come up with those ideas again is maybe you have a shot list set up. There's a lot of programs that do this, but they basically have like, you could put different like people into them, like little drawings of people, and you can choose whether it's a wide, a close up, that sort of thing. And so maybe you could create like, pre-template some storyboards with wides and close-ups and, a couple different people in them. And then you could kind of drag and drop those around for your scene, for your, whatever it is, the show that you're shooting, the episode. But yeah, I don't think you could do much beyond some simple things like that to help you just like go quicker when you're writing. So Span Down the Beat says, how is treatment important for a story? So I think if I'm understanding your question right, you're wondering like about doing treatments. And for me, like when I do any corporate work, I try to create a treatment for them, which, if you guys are unfamiliar, is basically like, it's kind of like a slide deck. It's a series of slides, or kind of like a little short pamphlet of pages of the feel and vibe of whatever it's going to be. Let's say it's like a little commercial or something like that. You may put a bunch of different like still images in there of basically how you want it to look, the vibe. You're going to put a whole bunch of like color schemes in there so that your client can get an idea of what you're thinking you're going to make this look like. Maybe you would put pictures of like different actors or characters or something that might be in it, and give them an idea of how that's going to look. So yeah, I definitely make those, and it really helps land jobs too, especially if you're just creating like an estimate for a video job and they're not sure if they want to go with you yet. You can create that entire treatment of like, hey, here's how it's going to look. And it doesn't even have to be that difficult. You can find pictures off of Pinterest or Google search or whatever to kind of come up with the idea and put it all visual so that your client can see that and say, yes, I love that. I definitely want to work with you. I think your vision is great. Or they might say, I'm not totally on board with that. Let's try and switch it up or change out some different things. So making treatments is a really good idea and a good way to bring your ideas to life and basically help people see your vision. So, all right. Samdeep says, I have written my first 2 scripts, just waiting for the lockdown to lift up so I can shoot with my friends. That's awesome. Yeah. Obviously this lockdown is making it difficult for anyone to do much of anything right now. So that's really cool. You've written 2 scripts. I would love to know, are they scripts for some little short films, or are you talking about like full feature length scripts that are like 100 pages long or whatever? And what genre do you like to shoot? Is it drama or horror or whatever? I would love to know. That's really cool. What's up, the Orlando guy? Thanks for jumping into another live stream with us. It's always good to see you around in the live chat. So yeah, keep the questions coming, guys. I know we're talking about story and writing and things like that today, and this is something that I think a lot of us as filmmakers or videographers, whatever you want to call yourself, can struggle with. We know the cameras, we know the gear, we love to talk about that stuff, but sometimes the story can slip and we're just more focused on the imagery and making things look beautiful and the lighting look good. And I know for myself that I can really struggle with coming up with those stories sometimes. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on those things, as well as any questions you have on gear and cameras and things like that. So if you clicked on the thumbnail of this video, you know, there's kind of that alien spaceship flying over a tent. I actually shot that photo last night. I was out camping with a couple of my buddies, and we were up in the forest, actually where that crazy experience happened, where we saw this bright light come shine down onto our tent a couple years ago. We were only maybe a mile or two from the spot where that actually happened. So I always think of that when I go back up there. I'm like, I hope I don't see that crazy bright light. I'm not trying to get abducted by aliens. No, I'm just kidding. But that actually did happen. That story's real. If you just jumped into the live chat, you can watch it in the replay. But so we were there last night camping, and I got that shot using the Fujifilm X-T4. So this camera is actually really awesome, becoming my favorite camera right now. It's been just so much fun to shoot with. So I did a little bit of astrophotography last night with this camera, and it did really, really well. It actually performs fantastic in low light, and it does a great job of actually pretty much doing an auto long exposure for you. So I was kind of playing with it and trying to mess with the shutter speed and see what I could get for some really starry night, and some the Milky Way and things like that, because I was in the middle of the forest, and obviously you can see the stars really great. Well, I was not getting the shots that I wanted, and then I realized you could just put it on auto once you're want to go to shutter, and it's actually just A underneath shutter, and then it will automatically get the perfect exposure for you for astrophotography. And that was really, really cool. I didn't have to choose hey, am I going to shoot for 12 seconds, 30 seconds? How long am I going to leave the shutter open? I didn't have to do anything. I just put it on auto, and then boom, hit the shutter release and just let it sit there on my little mini tripod pointing up at the stars and the trees. And once it was done processing, it created a great photo of the stars. So that was really cool. And I haven't seen a camera that really does that well yet. Usually you have to experiment and see how long do I need to expose to get a really good shot of the stars for those long exposures. But this just automatically knew when there was enough light for a good exposure. So I thought that was really cool. One thing I will say about the X-T4 is that after it did that long auto exposure for me, it takes a second for it to process. So it'll close the shutter, you'll hear it, and then it'll just say processing, and all these little bars on the screen going boop, 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 boop. And so it takes a minute for it to actually render that image out. But once it's done, you can watch it back and have your beautiful, starry night sky and catch the Milky Way and everything like that. So super impressed. I was shooting on the 16 millimeter Rokinon. So it's a 24 millimeter equivalent on a full frame. So it gets pretty wide. It gets a good amount in the sky, but not huge. I think if I wanted to do the whole Milky Way, I'd probably shoot on a 10 or 12 millimeter next time. But the 16 millimeter actually did great. And this one opens up to T2.2, so gets really nice wide aperture for those starry night skies. So yeah, the thumbnail that you guys saw with the tent all lit up and everything like that in the starry night on this video, I actually shot on this camera last night. So I've been super impressed with this camera. It's doing a really great job. So all right, jump down into the chat here, see what you guys are asking about. So all right, so Sandeep says the scripts that he's written are for short films, drama, action, and comedy all in one. And the other one is a web series of 4 episodes. That's awesome. Yeah, so all great genres. I love having drama, action, and comedy all wrapped in together. I think those are some of my favorite movies to watch and television shows to watch, where it's dramatic, it's intense, there's a little bit of action, people running around, fighting, shooting, whatever it is. And then there's comedy. There's that comedic relief. That stuff is a lot of fun. I mean, the one that just popped into my head that I'm really not the biggest fan of is Transformers, but it's funny. There's action. There's like this whole backstory of drama. Not the best example, but yeah, so that's really cool. I hope you get out there and start shooting soon and everything kind of blows over and you can start creating those short films. You learn so much every time you start making short films. So, all right. Hangs for Fun says, what are some techniques for coming up with and managing a shot list? Then organize them in order of shooting. And once a shoot is done, mark it as done. Yeah, it's a great question. So pretty much for me, when I am shot listing a video, and it kind of sounds like what you're saying is, I think you might be talking about making videos like for clients and such, because typically I don't shot list like a video that's going to be more of a narrative piece. That I would like completely storyboard out every single shot of how it's going to be. When I do shot listing, it's for a client. So for example, let's say I was shooting an ad for a restaurant or something, trying to get customers to come in. Well, I will just typically think of everything that I need to do, and I'll write out, and I just do this in notes on iPhone and just put a little checkbox thing next to it that you can check off. And obviously you could do this in anything, but I would say keep it digital if you can, and keep it in your phone so you can shot list. I don't typically like to do it on paper because my phone's always with me. So I create a list, and maybe we're shooting a restaurant, right? And so I would put, storefront, and I would write down like what kind of camera stabilization I'm going to do. So I might say, hey, wide angle, storefront, and then I'm going to be doing it on a slider or something like that. So you want to know, which, like if you're going to be wide, medium, close, tight, whatever it is. And then you want to know what you're getting a shot of and what kind of stabilization you're using. So that's what I would do. And then I would go down the list and be like, okay, I got a wide angle shot that's kind of a nice slider of the storefront. And then when I get in the store, I want another wide, and maybe it's going to be on a tripod. I'm just going to do like a panning of the restaurant or something. Or maybe I would put on that shot list, gimbal shot walking through the door and just entering into the restaurant. And then I would continue down the shot list. I want, close up of the chef cutting vegetables or something, or someone pouring a drink close up, or a medium shot of someone enjoying their food, whatever it is. So just create an entire shot list like that inside of notes. And then while I'm on the shoot, I'll just refer back to it and just go, did I get that? Yep. And then I might go, oh shoot, I never got that close up of, I don't know, an apple or something getting cut or whatever it is. And it just keeps you on track. But you just got to make those lists. And it's really simple way to really kind of storyboard out, or not storyboard out, but shot list out your shoots. So hopefully that kind of answers your questions. If not, just, comment, let me know. So, all right. So Max Soto says, is dynamic range something the audience notices in a story, or is it more of a creative taste filmmakers want? I've noticed that some films have blown out skies. For example, End of Watch, District 9. Okay. Yeah. So I would say that dynamic range is more of a technical thing, and the people watching the movie or television show or whatever it is, the video, aren't really going to notice the dynamic range that much. It's not something that most people have an eye for, but as a filmmaker or someone that does video, you're definitely going to notice when the sky's really blown out. Some people might notice that, and it can pull you out of the story. So I think the biggest telltale sign of like video is when the skies are blown out completely white, and that makes things look really basically fake and digital. So if you're watching a movie and the skies are just completely blown out in the windows, or when they're outside, it can look kind of strange and pull you out of the scene, out of the movie, because that's not how real life looks. So if you're walking around and talking to a friend or whatever, just in normal day-to-day life, the sky's never completely blown out white. That would be crazy, like apocalyptic. So really weird. And so you don't want to put that sort of stuff on screen for your audience to see, because it's going to pull them out of reality as well. That's just not how the real world looks. So I would say that it can definitely pull people out. There are some movies where they color grade it really extreme and they make the skies blown out. I think you mentioned District 9, which is like post-apocalyptic. So it was probably very intentional. They wanted the skies to be bright. And I don't know if that was after a nuclear bomb or something, but I find a lot of the post-apocalyptic movies go with really bright skies. And I think that's kind of their theme or idea, is that like things are crazier or hotter, or after some nuclear blast or something, and the skies are different than they ever have been before. So it could be a creative choice, but in reality, I think it's best to try and keep detail on the skies, keep them looking blue or cloudy or whatever, that sort of thing. So good question. The Orlando guy says, this pandemic has forced me into producing historical docuseries. Writing and asset acquisition has been the biggest issues, but it's been fun. Yeah, so I think that's definitely cool. It's fun to pivot and see different types of things that you can shoot. So doing a whole, documentary series on what's going on in the world right now could be definitely interesting. I think in a year or years from now, we're going to look back on what's happening in the world and just be, I don't know, just kind of amazed and trying to analyze what happened and everything like that. So if you can create that story and be the guy that tells a really good story, in your town or city or whatever it is, your country, about what happened, that would be really cool, because I know people are going to be talking about what's happening now in 2020 for years and years to come. So I think that's really cool. Definitely cool. So Brooke says, did you tell the tent light story? Yes, I told it at the very beginning of this video. So if you go back and watch the replay after the live is over, I explain what the thumbnail is all about with the alien light spaceship on the tent and everything like that. So she knows the story. I've told it to her before. So pretty crazy. Some Deep says, did you try the EOS R5 or R6 yet? I have not. So obviously, you're seeing a ton of reviews right now on the new Canon R5 and R6 all over YouTube. Everyone's talking about it, but most people don't actually have a full-on production model of it. Almost everyone's using a pre-production model that Canon has sent out to everyone to test out. I know some people have finally got their orders in and they're starting to actually do really good testing with that camera now that they have the full production model. But I haven't tried it out yet. I would like to get my hands on it eventually. But actually, in a previous live stream, we talked all about how you don't need 8K or 12K or anything like that. So I don't think it's a camera that I'm going to be picking up and buying for any reason, because I really don't need 8K. And I don't know, I'm kind of, how would I say this? I'm kind of deterred from Canon. My very first DSLR camera was a Canon Rebel T3i, and that was a great camera to start on. I loved it. Flip out screen, full 1080p and video mode. Really good camera to start on, but Canon took forever to catch up in the video realm. They were so focused on photography for so many years and decades that they kind of left their video people behind. So I got kind of disenfranchised, I guess you could say is the right word, with Canon. And so ever since, I haven't really wanted to go back to Canon, but maybe I'll check out the R5 or R6 in the future if I have the opportunity to, because it does look like an interesting camera. But if it really overheats like everyone's saying, then that's pretty useless. Got to have a camera that can stay on at all times. And I live in Arizona, which it gets extremely hot here. It's about 110 degrees Fahrenheit right now, pretty much every day, or 112 and above in the summer. So can't have a Canon camera in Arizona because it's definitely going to overheat. All right, so keep going on here. The Orlando guy says he has the EOS R5, the first in Orlando. It's good. Dynamic range and colors are great. That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's really cool. I think people are starting to get the camera. It's finally shipping and everything like that. So I'd love to hear more about your experience with it. Are you having any overheating issues, or is it working great? I would love to know. It sounds like the dynamic range is good. What do you know how many stops of dynamic range that camera has? I haven't seen anything, I haven't done a ton of research on the dynamic range on it, but I'd love to know, is it 13, 14, 15 stops of dynamic range, or what? Let me know in the comments. I'd be really, really interested to hear. So somebody says, what about the A7S III. So I don't have the Sony A7S III yet, but I am planning on the future here to make a review of it. I've been in contact with some people at Sony to see if I can get my hands at least on a review copy of it to test it out, see if I like it, and share with you guys if it's a good camera worth buying or not as well, to just kind of throw my hat in the ring. I know there's a lot of reviews already, but I would love to fully rig it out. I know a bunch of you guys on the channel have seen my rigging up of the Sony A7S camera, the Mark I, so it would be fun to rig up the Sony A7S III as kind of a follow-up. So I do plan on doing that in the future. I'm just waiting for them to send me the basically beta version of the camera, and then if I really like it, maybe I'll pick it up. It's pretty expensive in my opinion. $3,500 is a lot of money for a camera. None of my cameras have been that expensive. The most expensive one that I've personally bought is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K for $2,500. So the $3,500 price point is pretty big chunk to bite off there for me. Maybe I'll sell another camera to buy it, but I would love to know in the comments, have any of you guys tested out the Sony A7S III yet? Obviously it's not shipping yet. It's not going to ship until September, so that'll be really interesting to see it in the hands of more people and get some really good footage out of that camera that's not in beta. All right, so Ali Vlog says hi, what's up, how's it going? Thanks for hopping in. Extreme Video Studio jumping in, what's up? Talking about rain or sunshine. Don't know what the emoji is about, but I'll take it. Glenn Reed says, I'm late, but I'm here from Florida. Yeah, it's what, 11:30 p.m. I think in Florida right now. So yeah, it's a late night stream. Pretty much all my live streams are late at night after everyone goes to bed, and I can spend some time hanging out with you guys. It's always fun. And the thumbnail today was like perfect for this, right? Late night, little tent scene, all dark, little stars and stuff. So I thought that was kind of fun, little late night live stream. So yeah, thanks for joining, Glenn. And the Orlando guy says, with IS or image stabilization in body and lens, I'm getting about 11 stops in real world tests. With NDs, it's around 13. Okay, that's interesting to hear. So I think there's probably a lot of controversy or like kind of leeway in dynamic range on cameras. I know I just did an entire video on this on the channel. If you guys haven't already seen it, go check it out. It's the last video I posted all about dynamic range. And it's been interesting because this Fujifilm X-T4 boasts 14 stops of dynamic range. That's what they say in their marketing, and that's what Fujifilm says. And then the camera that I'm filming on right now, the Sony A6500, boasts 13.5 stops of dynamic range. So I think a lot of companies kind of stretch that, and it's kind of the top end of what their dynamic range could be. So, you know, if you're saying you're only getting 11 stops of dynamic range on the Canon EOS R5, that seems a little bit on the low end, but not totally sure. It's hard to judge. And then of course with NDs, you know, around 13 stops of dynamic range, I think that's pretty good. I think that's where a lot of cameras are landing right now on average, is in that 13 stop area. I mean, this again, the X-T4 says 14. Who knows if it's quite about that high. And the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K says that it gets 13 stops. So I'm not seeing a ton of cameras right now coming out much above that. And I know my last video talked a lot about this. I was saying, I want more dynamic range in our cameras. Can you give us 15 stops or 16 stops or 17 stops and above? And I'm just waiting for camera manufacturers to catch up and give us way more dynamic range, because even when I'm shooting out with this, with, you know, it's 14 stops of dynamic range. And yesterday when I was shooting out in the mountains, you know, we were camping, and there was a very shadowy spot on the side of the ridge of the mountain, and then the sky was really bright, and it just couldn't handle. I really had to expose for one or the other, and I forgot my graduated ND filters like I was talking about in the last one, so couldn't really bring down the brightness of the sky with an ND grad. So kind of hard to balance. And I was just thinking like, man, why haven't cameras caught up? And it's funny because my iPhone can pretty much take a better picture sometimes than these cameras. Obviously the quality is not nearly as high, but it has that built-in HDR. So you can see into the shadows and you can see into the highlights really well because it does a great HDR photo. So I'm hoping that the sensors on these cameras can catch up, give us more dynamic range, or do some really good HDR work. This has an HDR mode on it on the X-T4. It's actually one that you can click over to. And I was kind of playing with it, but it didn't really seem to be working or doing much. So I got to do some more research on that, dive into the user manual. This thing's huge. I'm keeping it handy for when I have time to read on it. Maybe that's what I'll do later this week. I'm going to look into the HDR. Have you guys used HDR on the X-T4? If you have, what's your experience with that, Ben? I would love to know. All right. Somdeep says it's 9 a.m. here in India. Yeah, it's crazy. It's a weird world. It's 9 a.m. on Monday morning for you, and it's almost 9 p.m. here on Sunday night. So that's awesome, though. It's a good morning to you, and you got a whole day ahead of you. So Sandeep says, could you share your tips on writing scripts? Yeah, so thank you for getting me back on track here, kind of go down some different side alleys here on the live streams with the questions and stuff. So yeah, ideas for writing scripts. Yeah, so for me, what I do is I keep notes in my phone of different ideas. And I think that that's a really good idea, is whatever you can access, if it's a book or whatever, just like a little notebook, write your ideas down in there or put them on your phone. But as you're thinking of those ideas, you can kind of write them down. And it's when you think of another idea for a character or a plot or location or whatever it is, go in and add to that right away, because you'll forget it. And if you think of like maybe some cool little scene that could even happen. So sometimes you don't have like a full movie or short film thought out, but you just have one scene. You're like, oh, that would be really cool if this or that happened. Write that down and then try to kind of flesh that out and see what about, why did that happen or that sort of thing, and start kind of finding all the loopholes and filling in those spots while it's fresh in your mind. Because I found that later on I might come back to an idea that I've written and I go, wait, why did I write that? What am I talking about here? So I think it's best to write down as much of that as you can and keep it going. Now, of course, it can be difficult to think of original ideas, so I like to just kind of brainstorm things and think. You might just start with something that's interesting to you. So maybe you think of a character, I don't know, maybe he's a cowboy or something, and then you just start working backwards from there, and you go, okay, it's a cowboy that, his family all died in a train wreck. And then you kind of work backwards from there, like why, what happened, so on and so on. So maybe you just have the character to start from, or you might have a really cool location idea or some off-planet thing, and then you just kind of work from there. So it's best to write all these ideas down, and then sometimes you just have to build backwards. I know a lot of people will actually write the end of their story first, kind of the climax of what happened, and then they'll write backwards to be like, okay, how did we get to this point? And sometimes you see that in television shows or movies where they'll actually show you the end of the movie first, right? Or like the end of the story first, and then it'll be like, rewind, 10 years ago, and then the story starts then. So sometimes you might have that great idea, start with the ending, and then work out how, kind of workshop how you get there. So another great thing to do is kind of have a friend or maybe a family member or a couple of friends that you can brainstorm with. So what I've done in the past when I'm trying to come up with stories, or I've entered into a couple different short film festivals, we'll all get onto a Google Doc together and we'll just start plunging away on ideas, just plugging away on ideas, writing down anything goes. Don't be embarrassed to just write it down, even if it's the stupidest idea ever. Just throw a couple ideas out there. So we're all on a Google Doc hanging out, just writing ideas. And then it's actually kind of fun because you write down your crazy idea, whatever it is, alien comes and abducts a family, but the family escapes and abducts the aliens. I don't know, some stupid idea, right? Well, you write it down, and then your friend sees it in that Google Doc or whatever the shared doc is, and they like that and think it's funny, and they have their own idea to add to it. And so they start kind of adding to that plot or story, and oh yeah, but what if this or that happened? And so then it just starts building into this crazy story as you have more minds, because sometimes we get trapped into our own minds and we can only think of what we can think, right? Our thoughts create our reality around us. So what we perceive is our reality. But if you have someone else's influence, it can really help. And then all of a sudden you start getting really creative. So I found that's one of the best ways to write ideas and stories is with another friend or a couple friends that are also interested in this. So definitely, I think that's a good idea if you've been kind of stuck or you have a story idea and you don't know how to bring that forward. Maybe get a couple friends to look at it and put in their input, or say, hey, what would you do? And maybe they can write up a little bit of addition to it, and that'll get kind of the creative juices, I guess you could say, flowing there. So, all right, going to jump back into the comments here. Okay, so Sandeep says, sometimes I get different ideas, but when I sit to write at night, I miss some of the ideas. It really is irritating to me to forget the ideas. Yeah, so I totally get that. Sometimes I'll be, daydreaming about some story or idea, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And then you don't write it down. You just forget it later. You're like, wait, what was that? I had this crazy idea. So for that, if you don't have the opportunity to, grab your notebook or whatever it is and write it down, try to just make a voice memo to yourself. We all carry around phones all day, and they have a voice memo app on it. So maybe just open that up and just hit record and just say the idea really quick, just verbally say it out. It's recorded. You're done. You don't have to type it up or anything like that. And then later on, you can go back and listen to it so you don't forget those ideas when you actually sit down to start writing your script or story or whatever it is. Domino Story says, I want to ask about horror shots. Okay. Ask away. What's your question about horror shots? I haven't actually shot a horror film or horror short film yet. I've kind of shot a thriller one. You guys might have seen it on the channel. It was called The Capsule. That was more of a thriller, but it would be fun to do a kind of a horror scene. What month is it? It's August, so October's coming up. Maybe I'll do something like that for Halloween. That would be fun, actually. I'm going to start brainstorming on that, see if I can come up with some, kind of freaky story or something that would be fun. So, all right. Greg Jones says, now use my voice memo app on my phone. Yeah, so it's a great way to just quickly record what your thoughts are. Glenn Reed says he used Apple Notes. Yep, I use Notes for pretty much everything. I wrote down notes just for this live stream, just a couple things that I wanted to talk about, so I'm always using it. Glenn says he's got an ongoing list of video ideas and cross them off as you go. Yep. I do the exact same thing. Keeps me organized. It's a great way to stay on track with videos and just things in general in life that you got to get done. So yeah, it's a very useful thing. So another idea for writing scripts and brainstorming ideas. You guys may have done this back in the day in high school or elementary. You would do kind of like that, like spider web or cloud. I can't remember what they called it, like cloud brainstorming, and you would like write one word in the middle. So maybe you have your one little idea and then you just start branching off of that and you go, okay, well, character, and then you branch off and go, you might, circle where they live. Okay, they live in the mountains, but there was a forest fire recently, and you just keep branching off, and then you just kind of like brainstorm this giant cloud of ideas and everything, and that can kind of help you write a story as you just put it all together. So that's still a useful technique. I can't remember what it's called, but sometimes I do that to just kind of get creative, and you could do that with a friend and they can kind of branch in their different ideas too. All right. Hangs for Fun says mind mapping. Yeah, maybe that's what it's called. I haven't heard it called that, but that's I like calling it that, mind mapping. It's like Mind Hunter or something. That's cool. Ollie Vlogs, what's up? He says, I just bought GVM 560 LED video lights. What do you think about the GVM 560 LED? So I haven't used that one in particular myself. GVM has reached out to me in the past and just been like, hey, do you want to review some of our lights? I haven't yet, but I've heard good things. I know a lot of people use them. It's a good, I don't know if entry level is the right word, but it's a good light to get started with. It's not too expensive. It's usually within budget. I think you can get them for just between $100 to $300, depending on if you're getting one or two of those lights. But my first LED lights that I bought were from, I believe, Newer, and they were really cheap, maybe $100 per LED light panel, and they definitely get the job done. So I think having any lights at all and more than one light is a great thing. So I have to look into the GVM 560 a little bit more, but I definitely think they can get the job done, especially if you use some proper lighting diffusion and things like that. So I've got just a simple 5-in-1 reflector right here off the side of my face, and I'm using the diffusion inside and just, you know, shooting an LED light panel right through it. So you can make just about any light look good as long as you're doing some bouncing and some diffusion and things like that. If you point any light at someone, just a hard light, it's usually not going to look super good unless you're going for that style of really harsh shadows and things like that. So haven't tested it out, but I'm sure it's a good light, especially when you start modifying it. Glenn says 1 topic, 2 outcome, 3 brainstorming ideas, 4 organizing possible script parts. Okay, so this is kind of your process, it sounds like. So creating simplified bullet points, 3 to 10 one-word phrases, things like that. So yes, that's cool. It sounds like you have a really good process for writing up your own scripts and ideas and everything like that. So I think that's awesome. It's one of the things that I struggle with. I know I said that at the beginning of this live stream, and thank you for everyone that's joined right now. I know it's late, but it's fun to chat with you guys. But for me, I get really creative when it comes to the visuals. I love to make a great looking image, framing it up and lighting it really cool and just making the image look beautiful and gorgeous. And that's why I like cinematography and like acting as the director of photography on set. Those are my favorite things to do. But when it comes to the writing side, it's just very difficult for me. So I definitely think if you have a process that can help you write better and come up with ideas, that's a huge deal. All right, so cool. Let's see what else is going on here. So looks like people talking about Glenn's new video. I'll have to go check that out on the Benbox video transmitter. I haven't seen that one, so that'd be cool. Yeah, so what other questions do you guys have on writing scripts and brainstorming ideas, or any questions you have on video gear? I would love to hear more about it. And while we're on the topic of camera related stuff, at the beginning of this video, I was talking about how I shot the thumbnail of the tent and obviously there's an alien spaceship that I photoshopped into it, but I shot it all on the X-T4, and I've been super impressed with this camera. If you guys haven't used it, it's definitely becoming my new favorite. So it actually has a bunch of features on it. So a lot of cameras can shoot panoramics, but they're not like really made or done very simply. Sometimes like you can shoot in panoramic mode, but you have to do a lot of post-processing and to like kind of stitch it all together. Well, this one has on the dial just the panoramic mode, and then it acts just like an iPhone. So if you use the iPhone and you go into panoramic mode, it basically says, hey, sweep your phone along and keep it along this green line or whatever, and it'll make the panorama for you. Well, the cool thing about using the Fujifilm X-T4 is it does the same thing. It puts a little green line across the screen, and then you just sweep it across and try and keep it as steady as you can. Just completely handheld. I was doing it handheld, not on a tripod, when I was out camping this weekend, and it did beautiful, beautiful panoramas. And it's cool because you hear the shutter going, goes chick, 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 the whole way. So it's just taking a ton of pictures, and then it analyzes all of it, stabilizes it, de-warps it, and makes it into this beautiful panorama. And it's the best that I've ever seen. I've never seen a camera take as good a panoramics as this camera does. So I was super impressed. There's like so much smart tech built into this, and you barely have to do any work to get a really good looking image out of this. So really cool panoramas that I was getting. And another thing is that it links up with the app. So when I was doing those long exposures, like this thumbnail, you have that night sky with all those beautiful stars. Well, you can just pull up the app for it, and it's called the Camera Remote Fujifilm. And once you get that linked up to your camera with Bluetooth, you can release the shutter. So there's the shutter release button right here on the bottom. I'm not linked up right now, but that'll actually take the photo for you. So if you've ever done long exposures, like doing night skies, astrophotography, you know that you really shouldn't be clicking the shutter button with your finger, because it might give that teeny bit of shake at the beginning, and then that long exposure is going to be a little bit messed up. So it's really nice to have that remote shutter release. I know that on my first camera, the Canon Rebel T3i, I used to have to actually like plug in a remote to it, and the thing was just trash, and it was the batteries were always dead on it, and it was like super annoying to actually program a long exposure into it and do like that remote shutter release. But like, it's 2020, right? Technology's moved so far beyond, so just quickly link up to it. I don't have to do anything. It always finds the camera just fine in the app, and then I just tap shutter release and the long exposure starts. So been super impressed with it. I know I'm talking a lot about the Fujifilm X-T4 in this video as well, but I've just been doing a ton of shooting with it this weekend, and I like keep getting more and more impressed with this camera. So I think it's definitely one of my favorite cameras to shoot with right now. And I've been picking it up way more than the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K. Now, I know a lot of you guys love that camera. I personally love it too, but I keep picking up the X-T4 because I can quickly shoot photos with it as well, whereas the Pocket 6K just is not set up or made for photography, where this one is. You can just quickly flip between still mode and movie mode, and I absolutely love that. So anyways, going off on a long tangent about my love for this camera, but if you guys haven't shot with the X-T3 or X-T4 before, it's definitely worth checking out. All right, so see what's going on in the comments here. All right, the Orlando guy says, "What's your best key lighting techniques for helping to separate subject from the background?" Okay, do you mean key lighting as in like actual key lighting, or do you mean like what are some key lighting techniques? I got to make sure I'm delineating this correctly, but basically I would say to separate the subject from the background, the most simple and easiest way to do that is the most obvious, and that's by using a backlight or hair light. Obviously I've got mine turned crazy red right now, but that always edges out your character and puts that little bit of highlight on their shoulders or their hair or whatever it is, and helps them pop off the background. Another simple way is to get contrast between your subject and the background. So obviously my shirt is black, and the background, you know, this wall and closet is much lighter. They're actually white and gray, and so that helps kind of edge me out from the background really nicely. So if you have your subject and they're also against a dark background, maybe throw a light onto it and just try to make it look natural, light it up, maybe make it look like sunlight, or maybe, add a lamp in there, an actual practical or something, whatever it is, to brighten up your background so that your subject now stands out. If you ever are looking at your image and you're like, man, my subject is really dark and the background's really dark, you definitely, unless, depending on whatever the story is that you're shooting, you may not want that. So throwing a hair light onto them, that backlight, and brightening up the background will definitely make your subject and background pop and give a really good contrast ratio. So, all right. Extreme Video Studio, what's up? He says, hello from Kyrgyzstan. I don't know where that is. That sounds awesome, though. I'm going to have to look that up. Yes. I wish you pleasant, not hot weather. Yeah, I'm in Arizona where it's very, very hot. It's 110, 112 degrees Fahrenheit right now. It's just been crazy, crazy hot. That's why I had to get out over the weekend, get up to the woods camping, and try not to get abducted by aliens. Just kidding. But again, if you jumped into the live stream late, that explains what happened. Go watch the replay. You can hear the story about that. So Domino Story says, I bought the Aperture 120D. What's your opinion? Yeah, that's a great light. I've used it a little bit. I don't personally own the Aperture 120D, but it's a powerful light and it's really small. It's actually compact. When you see it in videos and photos, sometimes you can't really get a sense of the size of the 120D, but it's actually pretty small for what it's capable of doing. So fantastic light, really clean CRI, which if you're not familiar, just basically means that white looks white and it doesn't add a lot of green or magenta into the actual light. So it looks more true to color. So Aperture 120D, great light. Don't have that one. I have used a little bit. Actually, I'm looking up here because I have another Aperture light, which is the LS Mini 20D, which is basically like the baby brother to it. And it's a fantastic light. So yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with, I really don't think you can go wrong with Aperture lights. They're fantastic. They're great high quality and they're coming out with new ones all the time. So great go-to lights. They're a little bit more expensive than some of the really cheap entry level ones, but they're definitely way less expensive than the high-end ones like Airy Sky panels and things like that. So kind of a good middle ground there if you want some professional quality lights that are going to last a long time. All right, so what's up, Jan? Hey, how you doing? Thanks for joining another live stream. It's always good to see you on the live stream. Right. Hey, so Singer Rathan, what's up? How's it going, man? Thanks for joining. Domino Story says, what about image stabilization on the X-T4? So yeah, I need to do some testing on that and make a video for you guys because I've had some mixed experiences with it. So I know that Fujifilm just released a firmware update for this camera recently in the past couple weeks to kind of help with the stabilization, because when you're, especially on those wide angle lenses, it kind of gets really warpy, and I definitely have been experiencing that and seeing it kind of like wobbly in the background to where it can really ruin an image and I can't use the video because it gets so wobbly. So I need to do some testing and dial in my kind of settings on it to see if it's just on the wide angles or if it's on more of my telephoto, like 50 millimeter and above, or what. But the stabilization so far has been decent, but I have seen some of that wobble. So but I'm using all manual lenses. So the manual lenses, you actually have to go in and set the stabilization to the focal length. So if I throw my 24 millimeter on here, I got to go into the camera settings and tell image stabilization that I have a 24 millimeter on, so it does it properly. If I switch to 100 millimeter, I got to tell it what lens I have on there. So if you're using a lens that actually has electronics in it, it'll automatically do the proper stabilization for you. So maybe some of the warpiness that I've been getting with the stabilization on the X-T4 has been because I haven't gone in and changed the actual lens stabilization in the manual settings there. So something that I'm going to be testing out and releasing more information on for you guys as I figure out more about that. All right, so Singer says, is the Canon 80D best for video? It's a great camera. It's a good price. I definitely think you can get some good stuff with that if you want to do video. Yeah, I think that's a good camera to definitely start out with and get some good footage on. So, all right, Sandeep says, I made my lights on my own using a couple of LED bulbs because I am just starting out, and I spend all my savings on my camera and lens, and my bulbs work great and are really powerful. Yeah, I definitely get that. When you're first starting out, you just start building whatever it is you can on your own. I can definitely relate. When I first started out, I wanted a backdrop. I don't know why. Avoid this if you can. Avoid this mistake if you can. Some reason, like anyone that starts getting into video says, I need a green screen. Like everyone has a green screen, right? If you're going to make videos and movies and things, you got to have a green screen. I see behind the scenes, everyone has a green screen. You don't need a green screen. You really don't. I mean, there may be some situations where you do, but for the most part, you don't. Anyways, when I first started out, I was like, I got to have a green screen. So I bought like the fabric for it, but I didn't have a way to actually like hang it. So I looked up tutorials on like how to build my own frame out of PVC pipe. So cut all the PVC pipe, glued it all together, and created this huge, like, I think it was a 10-foot by like 8-foot PVC pipe frame to hold the green screen. And yeah, it worked and it wasn't too expensive, but then when you got to break it down and travel with it, it was just a nightmare and figuring out how to put all the PVC back together. So I totally can relate though. When you're first starting out and you don't have a lot of money, you just build things. I built like a camera stabilizer for my first camera out of PVC pipes as well that had like little handles, and I could go handheld with it and put the camera in there, and I spray painted it black so it would look cool. So yeah, I think whatever works for you, definitely do. That's pretty cool that you created your own LED light. I don't see many people doing that, but I know you could buy like LED light strips on Amazon and places like that for pretty cheap. So I don't know if that's how you did it or what, but I know you can put a bunch of them together to kind of create your own light. So I think that's really cool, and being savvy and spending your money properly is a good way to go. Cameras and filmmaking is a really expensive hobby, so I definitely get that. Glenn Reed says you're wanting me, you're making me want to try Fuji now. Yeah, I definitely think it's a camera worth checking out. I've just been so impressed with it. Like, I think it's the first camera in a while that I've been like, wow, this is some really cool stuff in this. Great features packed into it, and that retro design, the silver body, is just so cool. Don't get the black version if you do get one, Glenn. Get silver. It's just so retro and cool looking. Great camera, but the best camera is the camera you already own, right? It's the camera you have on you. That's kind of the faux pas, the saying. So I don't think you got to jump ship yet to Fuji, but it's worth checking out if you can. All right, so Domino Story says, yes, I have to take a DSLR to the set. I can't remember what we were talking about there, but comment again, let me know. The Orlando guy says camping near Prescott or Flagstaff. Yeah, so in Arizona, I was actually camping near the Payson area. So up on the rim, if you're familiar with Arizona, which sounds like you are, it's more around along Payson. So Domino Story says it's raining here in India. That must be nice. It never rains in Arizona, maybe a couple times a year. So it's very hot, very dry. Domino Story says LED lights with diffusion looks like cinematic. Yes, absolutely. Using LED lights, you definitely want to add some diffusion because it can look really harsh and just not look very great. So adding any piece of diffusion is great. I said this already, but I'm using a 5-in-1 reflector right now to kind of soften out the light in my face. Super cheap. I think it's like 10, 15 bucks on Amazon. And then there's a little bit of diffusion on the inside of that 5-in-1 reflector, and it makes any light look a little bit more professional and gives you more, a more cinematic image because the skin tones and everything look better with softer shadows instead of those really hard shadows. So yeah, just about any light can look good if you bounce or diffuse it and flag it off properly. Yeah, Glenn says, I used to go to Prescott twice a year. Love the pine trees. Yeah, gorgeous area. Prescott is beautiful. For anyone that's been to Arizona, you may know what we're talking about. If not, sorry. If you ever get the chance, come to Arizona, visit the Grand Canyon and some other gorgeous spots here. Lots of trees, not just desert, not just saguaro cactuses. We've got other stuff too. All right, so Domino Story says, the Pocket 6K is great. It looks near to cinema camera like Arri or Red. Yeah, the Pocket 6K is a really great camera. I found that the color science on it is really similar to Arri. The footage can look really similar to that, and the dynamic range on that camera is really good, especially when you're shooting in B-RAW. So fantastic camera. I'm still using it. I use it on a lot of the professional shoots for clients where I need to shoot in 6K and get B-RAW. It's a fantastic camera for that, and I fully rig it out. I have a bunch of videos on that you guys can check out if you want to see about rigging up the Pocket 6K and adding a V-mount battery and a shoulder rig and everything like that. Great camera for some really cinematic images. And really good LUTs for it are the buttery LUTs. If you guys haven't checked those out, Mateo is another guy on YouTube that makes these beautiful LUTs for them, and they really look pretty similar to Arri once you throw those LUTs on there. So great looking footage. Max Soto says, the cameras that shoot 4K, does their 1080p give a better and richer quality than their 4K modes? I think that's a possibility. It's hard to say for sure. Some of the cameras that shoot in 4K and 1080p, the 1080p actually cannot look super good. You would think that they would take 4K and then just like downscale it into 1080p, but sometimes they don't, and the 1080p actually just looks much lower quality. So like on the Sony a6500 that I'm shooting on right now, I only shoot in 4K on that. Excuse me, for the most part, because the 4K looks really good, really sharp, but the 1080p doesn't look as great. So some of them do downscale 4K into 1080p to make it sharper and better looking, but you just got to research the camera and see if they do that. Not all of them do. Sometimes the 1080p doesn't look good. I think it's the Canon EOS R5. No, not R5, excuse me. The Canon EOS R, the original EOS R, shoots in 1080p. And I've heard that the 1080p on it does not look very good, but the 4K looks great. So just kind of depends on which camera you're shooting on. Naveen Mata says, can you please recommend cheap lights for independent filmmakers? Yeah, I think there's a bunch of really good cheap lights on Amazon that are just LED light panels that, as long as you're diffusing and bouncing them, can look great. So check out the Neewer lights on Amazon. That's Neewer. Or as we talked about earlier in this video, the GVM lights are also a pretty good affordable light. I think each of those lights are about maybe $100 US, and that's a good starting place. If you go too much cheaper, the quality may not be very good and may not last very long. So I would say check some of those out. There's just a ton of LED lights that you can buy, especially on Amazon, that are very affordable and will do a good job as long as you diffuse them properly. Samdeep says, have you tried the Canon 5D Mark II with the hacked version? It shoots 5.5 RAW, 5.5K RAW. I have not tried that. That would be really interesting. I've shot on the Canon 5D Mark 1 or 2, I believe, back in the day when the Canon 5D was really popular and everyone was starting to shoot video, but I haven't shot on that with a hacked version. That would be cool to check out. Maybe I'll have to look that up and see about this 5.5K RAW. So that'd be interesting. All right, so have you been to the Sholo area? Great in winter, says CRP Media. Yes, I was in Sholo last weekend, actually doing camping again. We do a lot of camping in Arizona because it's so hot. It's great to get out of the heat. Yep, I was actually in the White Mountains, Sholo area just last week. Domino Story says, which camera would you take in winter? I would take any camera. I mean, nothing really... the weather doesn't really determine which camera I'm bringing as long as it doesn't overheat in the summer. So any camera that I've got, I'm going to take with me. So yeah, let's see. Yeah, so CRP says it's not made for photo. He's talking about the Pocket 4K or 6K. It's a cinema camera. Yeah, it's not. It can take stills, but I never take stills with that camera. I really haven't figured out how to dial in a good photo on that. It actually takes like different like kind of bakes in colors and things like that when I was taking images with it, and they were kind of a weird aspect ratio. So just I couldn't figure out how to take a good photo on the Pocket 6K, whereas on something like the X-T4, just literally flipping this switch between still and movie made it so quick and easy to actually go start taking photos right away. It just did such a better job, but it's of course set up for that. And then another camera that, of course, just set up that little toggle switch between still and movie mode is the Sony a7S III, which I'm really impressed to see. They updated the menus. It's touchscreen now, easier to navigate, and you can quickly switch between photo and video. So I'm excited to see that and test that out in a future video for you guys. All right, just kind of going to be wrapping up here soon. We've been going for over an hour already. I just realized that it's already a little bit past. So, all right. All right, cool. So CRP Media says that he loves going camping up north. Definitely agree with you there. Yeah, Orlando guy says, have you tried a couple different restaurants out in Scottsdale? I have tried the Sugar Bowl. That's great. So it looks like we got a couple people familiar with Arizona in here. That's awesome. The Sugar Bowl is great ice cream. So, all right, so he's saying that Armando made a video titled, "This is not the Canon EOS R5 on the hacked version of the Canon 5D Mark II. It's really great." Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I love Armando. Met him at NAB last year. He's a really cool dude, super chill. So I'll have to check out the video and see his hack of the 5D Mark II and see what it can do. That'd be really cool. So I do get a little weary when people like hack their cameras because you don't want to mess them up and make like a permanent, firmware software adjustment that you can't undo. I know, I think it was called Green Lantern, something like that you would do on the Canon cameras before and actually kind of hack them, but you can void your warranties and things doing that. So it's a little bit of a risky gray area, but I'm going to check the video out and see what he's done. So anyways, we've gone into a lot of different comments and, side things here, but just to kind of wrap this live stream up, thank you guys so much for hopping in with me tonight. It's been a ton of fun. Telling you guys a crazy story about how I almost maybe got abducted by aliens. If you missed it, go back to the replay, watch the first 5 minutes of this. You can hear that story. Talking to you guys about stories, writing ideas, putting them down in your phone, brainstorming with friends, things like that, and just keeping that creative mind going. I find that the more I write and the more I think about things, you train your brain to write and think about stories constantly. If you don't stay on that, you just never have good ideas. So we got to really train our brains to keep thinking of ideas. I know I struggle with that the most. I love the video side. I love the lighting side. The writing side is much more difficult for me. So, but I think we can all train ourselves to do better at that. Magic Lantern. Thank you guys. Everyone says Magic Lantern, Green Lantern. That's a movie. So yes, Magic Lantern is what that Canon hack is called. All right. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for hopping in. Have a great rest of your night or morning, whatever time of day it is for you, wherever you are in the world. It's been a ton of fun hanging out. I will catch you guys on the next live stream. It'll probably be another late night live stream. So thank you guys for joining, and I will catch you guys in the next one. See you later.